Good morning, good evening, Mr. X's class. We're going to talk about the word enforce today. So to enforce has two meanings. It's a verb, has two verb meanings. One is to make sure that people obey a particular law or rule. So it means that if you make a law, it's no good to just write the law unless if there's nobody there to make sure that people do it. Because always somebody will try to break the law. So you need to have some kind of, at a certain level, I mean, society is built on force. It's kind of unpleasant, but you know, you have to do it. So, so here's an example. The police enforce federal and state laws. So if there's a law that says, you know, you can't, it's illegal to steal, then the police have to come and if the police don't arrest people for stealing, they're going to think, well, I can do whatever I want. I'll keep stealing, right? So the police actually are the ones who, the government, the legislators in Congress make the laws, but the police are the ones who actually enforce them, which means that they use force. So it has the word force in it, if you think about it. They use force. If somebody, if somebody breaks the law, they can come and arrest you, take you to jail. You use force. Even if you don't want to go to jail, sure you don't want to go to jail, but they would take you anyway if you broke a law, right? So they use force. So that's what enforce can mean. One is, but think about it, it's enforced laws or rules. So it has to be, mention a law or a rule somewhere in your sentence if you make a sentence. The police enforce federal and state laws, or teachers enforce rules in class. The principal enforces rules at school. So, and then another definition, to make something happen or force someone to do something. So, this is, you're not mentioning a law or rule. It's saying force someone to do something. But when you make a sentence with this meaning, it's usually followed by a noun, not by a verb. So, we could say something like this. We need to enforce compliance. Do you know what compliance is? To comply means to do what you're supposed to do, like to follow the law, to follow the rule. So we need to enforce following the rule. We need to enforce following the laws. Let's say if they will not listen to our arguments, then we need to enforce compliance. What we don't say with definition 2 is, we don't say this. People want to say this sometimes. Enforce the person to do something. If you want to say that, you take off the N. You say force. Then it's correct. We need to force him to, blah, blah, blah. Force her to do something. But don't say enforce her to. You don't say that. So the second definition, we don't say this kind of a thing, not with a person. We say enforce and then a noun. The noun is like something general. So it could be like compliance, submission, obedience. Maybe that's a better obedience, because people know what that means, right? Obedience is kind of like compliance, but compliance is following a law. Yeah, that's true. If you think about comply, it sounds like cumplir. I think it's the same root. But it's a noun, right? Obediencia, the noun, with enforce. That'd be like definition 2. So, but don't say this. Don't say, don't say that. What you'd say for that is, force him to comply. That's correct, right? That's correct. What's the difference? Here you have en, here you don't have en. That's correct, that's wrong. But this is not your word. This is not on the card. So, if you're making sentences with enforce, the easiest thing for sentences I'd say is this one. And this is the more common use, I think. Enforce a law or enforce a rule. But if you want to make a sentence like this, it could be something like that. With a noun after it. All right, here's an example with English. In essay writing, teachers enforce rules of organization, spelling, and punctuation that they do not enforce for poetry. So poetry doesn't have rules the way, at least free verse modern poetry doesn't have rules the way essay writing does. Not the same kind of rules. So if you want to ignore punctuation, or think about for colored girls, in Tazaki-san, she leaves out periods, she spells things wrong, she doesn't use capital letters. Like if she wrote that for an essay, she'd get a 0 on grammar and spelling. But she doesn't care, because it's poetry. She can do whatever she wants. So teachers enforce different rules. We enforce rules for essays, because the essays are supposed to be formal and they're supposed to follow all the rules. So to enforce the rule means, don't just say the rule, right? If you break the rule, then you get a lower grade. You enforce it using force. Okay. In Spanish, hacer, cumplir, o ejecutar is what we have. I think, but just that one, can that mean to kill a person? Also, in English it can, execute. So just be aware, it doesn't mean that. It's not in that sense. It's ejecutar una ley or something like that, right? But not ejecutar una persona.
It's not covered.
You're not killing anybody, but it's like making a law. Make sure that people obey a law. Okay, word families, enforceable. We've seen this before, able. What part of speech is that? And what does it mean? Adjective. And if you look at it, it has able in it, so it means able to be. Able to be enforced. Si se puede, enforce it, right? The opposite of that, you can have the opposite of that too, which I think is not on your card, but it could be unenforceable. So we could say the opposite of that would be unenforceable. We could say, if somebody makes a law saying that every person will use a napkin on their lap when they're eating dinner, right? That's unenforceable because the police can't go into everybody's house and check. So, but if you have a law that no one can turn right on a red light, or sorry, no one can drive straight through a red light, I mean, that's enforceable. The police can watch, they put cameras, they enforce the law. So that's an enforceable law. Enforcement. What do you think that part of speech is? Noun. And what would be the ending? There's an ending in Spanish that's like that. Meant in English? In Spanish,